Hi, this is George Sachs, clinical psychologist and ADHD expert. I'm here today with Beth Main, who is also a specialist in adult ADD. Beth is a ADHD coach and licensed professional counselor. Welcome, Beth.
Thanks, George. It's good to be here.
So today we're going to talk about the famous book, Getting Things Done by David Allen, which I often recommend to my clients, although sometimes it can be really difficult to get through. So I'm hoping today you can condense the key elements down to something that people can digest easily.
Yeah, that's the thing. So Getting Things Done is an amazing book, but it can be a little bit over the top for people with ADHD. Essentially, the gist of it is you want to get everything out of your head and into a trusted system so that there is no, oh, I forgot to take care of whatever, and then you run and take care of whatever, and then, oh, well, while I'm doing that, and then an hour later you realize, oh, I never did this absolutely critical thing that I had to do. So we get everything out of our heads. It frees up mental bandwidth for doing other things. It's a little bit different than a to-do list, just a to-do list. It really is a complete system. So there's the tool that you use, which according to David Allen, and I agree, it doesn't really matter what kind of tool you use. It could be paper, it could be a phone app, it doesn't really matter. As long as you create what I call a master list of everything that you have to do. What I usually find when I introduce this idea of a master list is people are like, oh no, that's too overwhelming, I can't possibly do that. And so that's where another very important principle of getting things done comes in, is that we manage the list. That's a very important step. So once you've got everything out of your head, then you figure out for each thing, is this something I'm going to do? Is it something I'm going to delegate? Is it something I'm going to defer? Is it something that I can just drop? And he uses the concept of a daily review and a weekly review, where you're essentially, of all of these things in your trusted system, what are you going to do today? And we manage these things by priority. We figure out, what's roughly in what order you're going to do them, or what is the most important, so you don't have this just massive database of stuff to take care of.
So the first step is the collection process, and gathering everything together. And I remember he recommended an well, we're talking about digital stuff, physical stuff. So how do you, what's your recommendation for gathering and collecting all the physical things, paper and stuff like that, into one inbox, and then all your digital emails and digital things into one collection box?
Yeah, that's a really good question. All your physical things, usually there's something in there that represents a task. We tend to make piles and collect things, and we mix it all in with magazines and catalogs and bills, and everything gets kind of lumped in. So if you recognize that most of what's on pieces of paper represents a to-do, then you can pretty quickly translate, oh, for this piece of paper, it's this task, and you put it in your system. And then you can either throw out the paper, or you can file the paper physically, or do what you want. But sometimes it's helpful to have the paper to refer back to. But generally, you want to have all the important information in your system so that you don't really need the paper.
Oh, I see. So you're saying look at the paper, figure out what the task is, and then put that in the digital system.
Exactly. And it's the same with email. A problem that I see with a lot of adults that I coach is they want to use email as a task management system. And they say, oh, well, somebody sent me an email, so I will just go back to my email to figure out what I have to do. The problem is email is a communication tool. It's not a task management tool. So here again, you have to separate the tasks. If you get an email and you agree to do something that's in the email, you create a task for it in your trusted system. And then the email, you can reply to the person and say, okay, I'll take care of this, and I'll let you know when I'm done. You can delete it, or you can save the email and as a reference, whatever you want to do with the email, but that task is no longer buried in your email. you've got it in a system that you can easily manage.
So the goal is to have not to have more than one to-do list or collection system. It's to move everything into one digital inbox.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because one of the problems with ADHD is we have difficulty with executive function, right? Which means, among other things, that we have difficulty holding multiple pieces of information in our mind at the same time. What we need to be able to do is prioritize. Of all the hundreds of things that you have to take care of at some point, which one is the most important? Which one are you going to take action on next? You can't do that if you've got multiple systems. There's just no way to hold all this in your mind and make intelligent choices. You know what I mean? If you have one
Yeah.
system, you can lay it out visually. I like the phone apps that have, and the web apps that have the drag and drop ordering, that you can like literally drag things into their roughly the order that you want to do them in.
Okay, so what systems do you recommend before we get into the process of dealing with this inbox? What systems do you recommend software systems that you recommend that would be good for people to use as their main collection?
Yeah, so I get asked this question a lot, and I'm going to answer it in two different ways. Way one is the best system, the very best system is the one you're going to use. So it has to solve the problem of easy to use, and the person wants to use it, and it makes sense to the person. So I have people using phone apps, which I'll tell you about my favorite phone app in a second, but I have people who use like artistic type people who love notebooks. They will put it in a notebook with high quality paper and a fancy pen, and they have pictures in it. That works great for them because they like to open the book. Some other people are good with a phone app. Some people use spreadsheets. I even had one guy who put stuff on little cards, and he put them in a baseball card folder. And that's how he managed his tasks. I thought that was brilliant because that worked for him. So the answer is the system works best for you. So to answer your question more directly, one system that I personally like, and I've had a lot of clients with a lot of success, is an app called TickTick. It's a cloud-based system. There's a web version, there's a phone version. You can run it on your tablets. It's super handy because most of us carry our phones around with us all the time, so you can just quickly put stuff in on your phone when you get the idea of having to do something. It's got a computer interface so that if you have the kind of life where you're at a computer, you can have this big screen and drag things around with your mouse, and it's really very visual and very easy to use.
TickTick. Okay, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
What I use is I'm a big fan of Google, so I use Google Tasks as it appears right as an extension in Gmail, so you can have it right next to your Gmail. So if you do have an email, as you said, emails are not tasks. You can easily drag the email into Gmail, into Google Tasks, and then it becomes a task. And it's and then I use another Google app called I think it's called Notes or something like that. Oh no, I'm sorry, Google Keep.
Google Keep, yeah. Okay.
And I use that not for tasks, but for keeping data. Anything that's important, like a restaurant that I see that I want to remember, I'll put that in the Google Keep. But for the tasks, that's the one I'm using is Google Tasks.
Yeah, and I used that for a really long time, probably, I don't know, maybe a decade. I used Google Tasks. I loved it. And then they changed the interface, and I just this is driving me nuts. And so I was looking for an alternative. Google Tasks is great for somebody like yourself who's already using Google. If you're using Gmail, it's perfect. Yeah. It's very easy. It's very nicely integrated, which is fine. The reason that I switched out of it is I didn't like the interface. There used to be a full screen Google Tasks, and they discontinued that.
Oh, okay.
And so now you can only see it in this little strip on the right side of your screen, which I didn't care for too much. TickTick also integrates with Google Calendar. So if you have a task that actually has a due date and you put a due date in your task, it will show up on your Google Calendar, which is very nice.
Great.
And I tend to not drag and drop things from my email. Like if I have a task in email, it's just as easy for me to create a task. It's as easy to create a tick tasks as it is to create a Google task. The interface is very nice and clean. Another thing, and this in my mind is the killer feature, GTD, getting things done, or GTD, uses this concept of contexts. So you can have, it basically means it's basically the way to group like kinds of work, like phone calls or work at your computer or errands. TickTick supports tags. Like Microsoft Outlook does tags really nicely, and so does Google, where you can create a tag and you can tag a task. Like you can tag a task phone, and then only show tasks that you have tagged as phones, so that when it's time to make all your phone calls, you just boom, 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 right together.
Yeah, that is very helpful. Okay, so now everything's in TickTick or whatever system you like to use. And how do you approach it? How do you tackle your inbox?
How do you tackle it? So it starts with prioritizing, right? And deciding, is this a long-term thing, a short-term thing? I like to think of prioritizing tasks is kind of like a buffet restaurant. So your trusted system is a lot like the Chinese buffet. It's big, it's overwhelming, there's trays of food all over the place. You only get one plate. So the metaphor is the trusted system is the restaurant. What you're doing today is your plate. And you just kind of look around and you say, okay, what am I going to eat right now? And you give yourself a helping and you put it on your plate. And then you only look at your plate. You don't have to look at the rest of the stuff. Overwhelm is a big problem, as you know, for those of us with ADHD. And so it's a nice way to manage the overwhelm is to just go in there and decide, what am I going to do right now? Which is actually a little bit different than what David Allen would describe. He would have us only use contexts. And you do manage your list in that if something is going to be deferred, you kind of put that away and you can sort things. Or if you're going to delegate something, then that wouldn't be something. But you're basically deciding how you're going to handle it and what your priority.
So you're saying in TickTick you have a different categories, so something like do it now or immediate?
You could. You absolutely could. So TickTick, you can put a date on it. You can put, you can use high, medium, and low priority. Or what I actually do is I have a category, I have a tag called today. And if I'm intending to do it today, I'll put that tag on it. So that I then only, once I do my morning, what do I think I'm realistically going to accomplish today, or what's important for me to do today? All I have to do is view the tasks that have this today tag on them.
Okay. Now talk about the other parts: deferring, delegating, trashing. What's the other ones?
Yes, it's the 4 Ds. You can do it, you can delegate it, you can defer it, you can drop it. So drop it that's a whole other topic that we don't have time for, like letting go or making peace with the fact that you're not actually going to do something. But if possible, you can just delete things, just decide ain't gonna happen, notify the person, and then delete it. Defer just simply means I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to do it at some point in the future. The GTD system has what they call a maybe someday list, where it's a separate list and it's ideas that you don't want to lose. You're not quite ready to let go of them. You're not ready to drop them, but you're acknowledging, okay, not anytime soon. So you put those faraway tasks in there, so they're still captured. This idea of capturing your tasks is the whole centerpiece of this system. But you don't have to worry about them day to day. Delegating, that is something that most of us with ADHD could use some improvement on, and it simply means asking for help, asking somebody else to help you with something, to take care of something. Some of us are fortunate enough to have assistants to delegate to. Some of us not quite so much, so we have to be a little bit more creative. Like, do you have the means to hire somebody to help you with your cleaning, or is there somebody else that you can get involved? Are your children ready for more responsibility? Like, who else can you get to help you? Ideally, you want to be, this is a whole other topic too, but ideally you want to be delegating the things that you're weak at and focusing more on what you're good at. but that's a whole other topic. And then of course there's the doing. And then once you've got your list of things that you are actually going to do, then you can sort them by priority or assign them to contexts or whatever you want to do.
Right. So every single task, once it's in the right place, has an action associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we get stuck with, what am I going to do? What do I have to do with that? But it's one of the 4 Ds. Do it, defer it into a, someday maybe, that's a good idea, but not now file.
Mm-hmm.
Delegate it, which is really important to get support and hand off things, and to drop it or trash it.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not that could be a someday maybe, but it's really making decisions about how important it is, and is it something that you want to do right now?
Exactly.
Okay, well, this has been a great overview. I also recommend a book called Zen to Done, which is Zen to Done. It's kind of, somebody wrote a very condensed, kind of like a Spark Notes or Cliff Notes for getting things done. And that's on Amazon as I think an ebook. But Getting Things Done is a wonderful program if you really can get through it and understand it.
Can I just add one little thing to that?
Yeah.
Which is, if you get the Getting Things Done book, it is a little over the top. Some of the things that he calls for, you're going to be just like, yeah, there's no way I'm doing this. Just do it good enough, right? So good enough GTD. Like David Allen will say, when you first get started, take a half a day and go through all your in baskets and make this comprehensive system. I don't want people to put a hurdle in front of something that's so important, right? So if something is overly complicated, it just means you're not going to do it. So just do it good enough. Make it simple. Keep it simple. You don't feel like you have to follow David's instructions to perfection. If he ever watches this, he's going to smack me for that. But just do it good enough. Keep it simple. Do what works for you. Just use the basic principles.
Well, I think that's very true. And I found what works for me is to actually have 2 inboxes, a physical one for papers and the digital one, which is the Google Tasks, because, with our forgetfulness and all the issues with ADD, moving the physical tasks into a digital system is hard.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the gifts I got from David Allen is to really throw things away and get it out of my mind. I mean,
yes.
Get the clutter out of our minds, put it in a digital inbox or a physical inbox, and then what's the word he uses? But deal with it, don't let it pile up. Every week, start throwing things away, dropping things, moving them to someday maybe. So have a system that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the bottom line. It has to work for you.
All right, Beth. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you next year for the 2nd annual summit.
That sounds good. All right. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.